Hey, everybody. Just want to let you know you're in the right place if you're looking for the E3LC Leadership Training Coaching Book of the Month. This is a new month, and we're going to start a new book. We're actually starting a new series. So I kind of want to explain that. So while we get into it, I just wanted to talk about what it is that E3LC is all about in a short way, right? So E3LC is just a short acronym for what I do when I'm teaching leadership training and even in coaching. I kind of think of these three E's that are an overriding theme in how to help people move forward. So the three E's are effective with people, efficient with things, and encouraging with myself. And so I've been working in the leadership field as a kind of, I would say, an amateur, if you will. I've done it with groups. I've kind of developed my own systems with groups that I've led in the past, in mostly in the music arena of life, I guess, but a little bit in the business world too. And now I'm moving definitely into coaching and in the business world with it, with the leadership idea and with coaching and even some consulting. Anyway, that part's not important. Other than that's kind of what's driving this whole thing of me doing these series of books, and I just wanted to put it out there that I am developing new material, things that I've learned from other great teachers and other great books and other great philosophers in the past, and tried to figure out a way to say it in a way that has a sort of an overriding theme, I guess is where I'm going here. So the three E's kind of came up in that I've had different iterations of how I explain, like, well, how do you be a good leader, right? When it boils down to that question. And there's a lot of answers to that question, and everybody, there's a lot of people that have, their slice of how that works. Mine happens to be this, and I've just noticed that when you work in these three areas, when you work at being effective with people, that can mean a lot of different things, right? There's a lot of ways to talk about what does that actually mean. And I'll be doing a series on that also. I'm going to go through each of the E's and kind of talk about that and different ways to look at it. But anyway, that's a just to let you know, like, there's more coming out. I'll be looking for new material, new videos on that. The book of the month plan was just a way to kind of start the process, maybe have a conversation about these things as opposed to just me pontificating about my opinion about these things. So there are great books out there. There's a lot of great information that has come before us at this point in time. And I think it'd be silly to think that I've somehow discovered some new thing. I think all I've done is taken a lot of information into my life and gone, okay, well, how does that apply? How do I explain that to other people? How can I give that away in a way that people can see it as something doable and something that's easy, not easy, but something they can actually incorporate into their lives. And so anyway, so that there's that. There's the efficient with things, right? So there's a lot of in the coaching world. We'll go there for a minute. There's a lot of people that coach, and it really just turns into priority management or time management skills, and coming up with new ideas about that, which is very good. I consider coaching to be a much deeper process than that. That's actually more of a consulting role, but well, it depends. But it's more of a mentor role. It's more of a kind of a hey, I've got some systems here, let me help you, which is kind of a consulting approach. Coaching is a little bit different in that sense. So I'm not going to go further along there, but just know there's more to it, right? There's more to investigate. Okay. And then the third one, encouraging with myself. I think that's the area I know for me that I needed the most growth. And it's the one that I've worked at the most. And yet feel like I've spent the most energy on the other two. It's very interesting, when I started to reflect about this book and went through here and what am I going to say? I realized, like, wow, I've spent a lot of time thinking about, well, what does it mean about myself? Who am I? What is going on up here, right? That has me do the things I do or keep me from doing the things that I say I want. Those kinds of questions, right? Kind of deep questions. So we're not going to go like super crazy deep with this. We're just going to fall. That's partially why I'm doing the books is we can go down rabbit trails real fast, and some may say that I do. I don't know, but I do know that I'm interested in having discussions with people about ideas and learn about where they're coming from, so I can learn more about where I'm coming from, and we can grow together. That's really a lot of what I'm trying to accomplish here. Okay, so we've reached this month is the first book in that third part of encouraging with myself, and so I picked a book that was written 30 years ago at this point, and I read it not quite that long ago, but not not that far off either. And it at the time, the first time I read it, because I think I've read it 3 times total, which isn't much. I read a lot of books over and over, but this one I did reread, and then I put it down, and then I reread it again, and then I put it down for a really long time, and then I read it again recently. So, um, and looking back, like why did why did it not make the cut of books that I wanted to reread often? And I think it was just I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to I don't know really dig in. And in training to be a coach for people, I really have done a lot of digging and searching and trying to figure out, well, what is it, what is it, what can I bring to the table, what is it about me, right? And that gets into the whole self-esteem thing, and that's what this book is. It's the self-esteem repair and maintenance manual. Okay, looks like that, um, in this iteration anyway, by David Brooks and Rex Dalby. So there's 10 chapters, and this month happens to have 5 weeks in it of days that I'm going to be doing this. So I'm just going to do a couple of chapters a week, and so these may be shorter than what I've done in the past. I don't know. We're just going to chat, right? So um, so I'm going to do chapters 1 and 2 in this book, and they're they're going at the whole idea of self-esteem. Okay, so I picked that because when you're encouraging with yourself has a lot to do with your self-talk, right? Encouraging you means you're going to encourage yourself. And there are some people on the planet that don't need more encouraging. All right. There's a lot of people on the planet that I seem to hear about, see, experience, read about, that need a lot of encouraging. They feel less than, to put it mildly, right? And I certainly fall in this category for a long time. Long time. I was trying to overcome that. I was trying to push that out. Only recently did I realize what kind of value that has. And I'm not going to go down this road. That's going to be another topic for another video. But um, this book points to ways to address that, right? In a very practical sense. So one of the things about this book I just want to say on the outset is it's very small, it's very thin, right? And they even say, look, we could write volumes on this, but they wanted to write a manual. They wanted to write a to do. How do I actually quote fix my self esteem, right? Now, this was written at a time when the self esteem movement, if you will, it was becoming a big deal. And in some ways, in some areas, and I'm not going to point any fingers or anything, but we may have taken that pendulum and swung it a little too far, where we weren't necessarily allowing people to earn their self esteem. We were just telling them, you have good self esteem. There's a big difference. They even talk about that a little bit in the book, and we'll get through that. But um, so anyway, there's a line there, and I think what they tried to do was stay within the lines of, look, this is actually how you develop self-esteem, and they even get into it, right? So speaking of getting into it, so let's just jump in. So chapter 1 is setting the stage. So they want to kind of set things up, like where are we at? What are we talking about? That sort of thing. So they even they get into, look, well, what is self-esteem, right? And their first thing they say about it, they say self-esteem is a way of feeling about is a way of feeling about yourself, right? If you accept who you are, good and the bad, ugly, whatever, then you're said to have high self-esteem. If you don't accept or like yourself, you're said to have low self-esteem. And they're like, well, it's kind of that simple, right? If it's not that you think highly of yourself, that's a form of arrogance. They're not talking about that. They're just saying you accept yourself. You're okay, you're comfortable in your own skin, you realize you've made mistakes, but you're willing to accept the responsibility for those, et cetera, et cetera. And they get into all that later. But so there's that, right? And then they do a really quick thing about self esteem versus self-image. He tells a little story about there was a panel of these two experts in the area that argued for 20 minutes or so, or however long it was, um, about the difference between self-esteem and self-image. And one of the authors just sat there and went, "This is not helping anybody." Nobody in the audience was moved to improve themselves over this discussion about what this means and what that means. So he's like, we're not going to get into that. So it really doesn't matter. So there is, there's kind of a statement. Self-esteem. This is more of a more encompassing kind of definition, if you will. Self-esteem means appreciating my own worth and importance, and having the character to be accountable for myself, and to act responsibility towards others. Now they walk through those three parts: appreciating my own worth and importance, and kind of already talk about that. Like, do you actually realize what you do bring to the table? Have we all made mistakes? Of course. But too many of us spend our time worrying about those little mistakes or even a big one, like one big one, and forgetting all of the things around that are so great. Something about our human brain, we're wired to see what's wrong, right? If you see a nice clean wall and there's a speck of something on there, you don't see the whole wall, you see the speck of something. Right? And it just seems to be a very common thing. It's really easy to see when things are out of place. Rather than looking at how much there is that's working, you see the thing that's out and you fixate on that. And with self-esteem and kind of encouraging yourself, that theme, we tend to focus on, oh, we did that wrong, and we sort of replay it, re-say it over to ourselves, how dumb that was, or why did you do that, or whatever, right? So they're saying, okay, look, first you got to kind of like calm down and appreciate that you do a lot of great stuff. Okay. Yeah, you may make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. To dwell on them is kind of kind of at the crux, if you will, of low self-esteem. That's kind of what they're getting at. And then they talked about having character to be accountable for myself. So really, it's really about saying you're going to be accountable for yourself in the way of taking action, and then whatever happens, accepting the consequences. That's a really simple version of what they're talking about. I think that's true, right? You, instead of you do something, it goes wrong, you blame somebody else. That's not really helping your self-esteem, right? You're deflecting. You are avoiding responsibility for things you do, good and bad, right? And when you accept both, it's okay to make a mistake, learn from it, you move on. It's also okay to make a mistake and not do that, but you're going to learn more, and you'll actually feel better if you learn and move forward as opposed to get stuck and stay behind, right? So that's kind of their point there. And then the third part is act responsibility towards others, and that nobody lives in a vacuum. We all work with people. We all have to deal with people, whatever level, right? Even if you're by yourself, the things you buy were made by other people, right? So no one lives in a complete vacuum. No man is an island, as it is said, right? So you have to keep in mind that you have to act responsibility towards others, and that helps feed into the feedback of you are a good person because you're able to deal with other people on a nice level, and it's cordial and it's pleasant, and you work together well, you get things done. That builds your self-image, self-esteem. Excuse me. So there you go. So that's one of the point. Now the other thing he talks about in here, what they're trying to say is, okay, that's all well and good, and you can think all this stuff, and you can like figure this out, like, okay, yeah, that's all true. But if you just talk about it, or you just read about it and think about it, that's all you do. If you don't actually act on it, and they use this analogy throughout the book, and it's pretend you're a car, or your thinking is a car on an assembly line, and you're in charge of putting together the car, right? And and their point is, you actually have been in charge of putting together your car. You, not just your body, but your insides, your thinking, what you bring to the table, right? You've been in charge of what goes on the car, what is left off the car, what stays, what's taken off, what's fixed, repaired, modified, whatever. So so they use that analogy a lot. So he says, look, if your car is broken down, you take it to the mechanic and you tell him, okay, I think this is wrong. And he goes, okay, great. But doesn't fix it. Like, you can keep telling him that's wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. That's not working. This needs to be fixed. If he doesn't actually fix it, it ain't getting fixed, right? So sorry. Um, so that's the thing. Their main point is like, there's too much talking, and that happens a lot in therapy. It happens a lot with counseling. Is that you go week after week and you talk. You just talk. Now, that's not, they're being a little harsh, right? Because I think great therapists and counselors would want you to take action. But his point is, let's just take action, right? We don't have to talk about it for weeks on end. We kind of know what the deal is. Well, let's get to it, right? And that's partially their message here is like, just kind of get to it and let's make it happen. So it's a and they say, look, building self-esteem is a process. It's not a quick fix. You can't read a book and then okay, it's all fixed. And I think partially when I was younger, when I first read this, so sorry for my dry throat. When I first read this, I think I wasn't trying to consciously, but I think I was looking for a quick fix. I was trying to figure out like, okay, how do I get better? Because I just want to be better. I just want to move on. I want to be successful. Whatever. What do I got to do? Great. And so when I looked at it and I was like, yeah, that makes sense, and went through some of the exercises they have you do. Okay, well, nothing massively changed. So then instead of thinking, well, it's a process, I forgot that part and I was like, oh, move on to the next one. So I sort of missed out, right? And that, looking back, that was pretty short sighted. So with anything, right? Most things are a process. You're not going to get a quick fix, right? Another way to look at that statement is, look, it took you a long time to get to where you are now. And if where you are now is not where you want to be, it's not going to just be an overnight thing to get out of that. It took a long time to get here. It's going to take a while to get back out. That's the way reality works. Sometimes can it seem fast? Sure, right? It seems like there's overnight success. Well, that's when you look at the history, a long line of just working with nothing, no results, and then all of a sudden, right? Which is, that always gives me hope. By the way, thinking of that, like, okay, well, great, let's keep producing, right? So they talk about the four A's in the success cycle, and this is again the kind of their theme, and I want to read it because there's a lot of truth in here. Man, I'm so sorry. So what they say about this is like how this works. Attitude leads to action, which leads to achievements, which, when acknowledged, leads to higher self esteem. So it's you build it up by taking action, right? And you take action only when they're saying when your attitude's in check. Like when you have the right attitude about what you're going to do and why you're doing it, you'll take the action, right? That will set things up so that you're willing to take the risks of that action. Now that leads to achievements at some point. You're going to fail, but there will be achievement with action. You will get a result. And when people acknowledge the result, then you go, oh, okay, that worked. That was good. And that was a good thing that adds to the pile of, yeah, I do have something to bring to the table. So that's what you're doing. So that's the tools that they say are in hand to build your car. So chapter one, right? It is setting the stage. What are they talking about? Well, self-esteem. We got the four A's, we got the car analogy, right? And so I think that's a really good way to kind of frame this is just think of yourself as a work in progress, as people say, but like a literal work in progress, not just a nebulous thing people just throw out that as sort of a cute saying, but really like let's work, let's figure it out, let's figure out what it is that's got me stuck, and remember that your attitude will lead to action, which gets you achievements, and when that gets acknowledged by others, usually that'll build your self-esteem. That's your ticket to self-esteem. It's not about everyone telling you you're awesome all the time no matter what. Okay, that's it's nice to hear, but when it's not always true, it can really backfire, right? And then you begin to believe nothing people say, and that's never good. All right, chapter 1. There you go. So chapter 2, embarking on your journey. By the way, I'm going to put this out now so actually no, I'm going to let you discover what I was about to say about the chapters. You figure it out by reading it. Anyway, chapter 2, embarking on your journey. So this is kind of okay, here we go. We got it figured out. This is where we're going. We got the 4 A's about how we're going to take action with our good attitude, get achievement and be acknowledged. Okay, that's how I'm going to build it. Okay, that's the plan. Great. Now, so they then say, great. So if you're going to start, Well, let's start with that first part, attitude. Okay, attitude is a function of your thinking. And I would take it a step further, and this isn't in the book. I'm going to just throw my own little piece in here. I would say your thinking comes from your values, comes from who you consider yourself to be, what things are important to you about what life should be like or how people should act. Those are beliefs and values that you've put together, and they're worth examining. It's worth sitting down and thinking about what do I value, right? And that's what I do with coaching clients. At some point, I normally will kind of talk about, well, let's look at values. You know, how does this align with your values? And if that is cloudy, well, let's identify them. What are your values, right? We do an exercise with that. Just a simple thing of just acknowledging what values are important and which ones aren't. Everybody's a little bit different. Okay, everybody highlights certain things and they devalue other things, and that's fine. That's what makes it great because everybody's different. So anyway, I would say those actually kind of dictate how you think, right? And how you view things, your attitude about things. So, with one set of values, you're going to think an action is great. Another set of values, that action is going to look ridiculous to you, right? So, it really does boil back to values. Even though they didn't say it in the book, I'm putting that in my little deal for whatever it's worth. Let's see here. So now, they do a little exercise. I need to talk about the assembly line and some more about. They're what I'm getting at is there's a little exercise, and they use the assembly line of a car manufacturer, right? So it's going along, and again, you can add what you want to add, you can take away what you want to take away, whatever, whatever. So, how has it been, right? So let's look at it. Like, let's look at your car. Where's it at right now? What shape is it in? So they have you say, okay, really simply, take a piece of paper, two columns, what I don't like about myself, what I do like about myself. Just take some time, write that down, right? So you sit down, you go, okay, don't like this, like this, whatever. And then they ask you some questions. And that's what I wanted to get to real quick. They ask you, which list is longer? Now, unless you've gone through this and you've really kind of put some thought into this, usually the don't like column is longer. And then the next question, which list was easier to write? Usually that one, the same list, the don't like column. Um, so if you looked at both lists, what would you like to keep? Right? What parts that go on the car, right? What would you like to keep about those lists? And what are the ones you'd like to get rid of? Like, you want to just get rid of these. I don't need these anymore, right? They don't serve me at all, or whatever. So now, as far as the like list, they ask questions. And this is common, actually. I've kind of done this too a little bit. Was it a little embarrassing to write down things that you like about yourself? Was it was it challenging to think about things you like about yourself? And that in of itself, just that it was challenging or that you found it difficult to actually say something. That in of itself is worth exploration, and I would, as a coach, key in on that. Certainly not going to do it now because we're just talking generalities here, but really, those kinds of things point to what's really going on and the thoughts that are happening that kind of limit your actions, limit the way you're seeing things. So you're not taking action because of the way you're seeing it, right? And that hesitation to say, I like this about myself. There's something there, and that there's worth exploration there. Just that's a little tidbit for you. All right. And then they get into like, well, how do you get these thoughts? Where do they come from? So they're talking about they don't go from value standpoint, but they're talking about, well, where do these thoughts come from? And basically, I'll do it quick. They just say, well, your experiences, right? What you hear from other people, your parents, your teachers, your siblings, friends, right? And then the media, etc., right? Your environment. But people tend to influence you a lot. Parents and teachers have a ton of influence over young children. So they just say, that's a huge influence. The other big part is what we say to ourselves, the tape that runs in ourselves about things that happen. Oh, you man, you're so clumsy, or whatever, or hey, you're kind of good at that. Oh, that's that. Yeah, you make that look easy. That's cool, or whatever, right? And that I don't know what people say to themselves too much. I mean, I know some, but I'm not right now. There's so many variables there. But really, it's really about the tape that we play. Is it serving you or not, right? So they go through kind of what happens is when you're super young as a baby, you get all this adulation, you get a lot of, oh, aren't they awesome, they're so cute, they're, no, you gurgled, oh, it's so awesome. And then as you get older, there starts to be a little more judgment, right? And they don't say it like this, but I'm going to say it this way. There's, when you look at a baby, not much judging that goes on when you see a baby, right? Some people do, but for the most part, like, that's cute, it's a baby. Like, it's pretty, it's awesome, right? Full of potential, full of new life. It's great. It's a very cool thing. And as people get older, their siblings, their friends, there seems to be more judgment, right? So telling people they're stupid, or you're not good at this, or why'd you say that, or you're, good, whatever, right? All that stuff that comes in. So as more and more judgment comes into the picture, the more we kind of go to ourselves and like, oh, and we either confirm what you're hearing about that, or you try to react against it. That's kind of the main thing there. So unfortunately, we tend to carry that around as baggage. And that's sort of their main point is all of that goes in. Like it all comes in, people saying stuff, and then what you say to yourself, it turns into this baggage we carry around with us. And we always like have to deal with this baggage all the time as opposed to just being, right? So I'll leave it at that because that is that's kind of the part of that part of the chapter is really that is like you're carrying this around. Why? Now Plato, they put a quote in here I think is really good, and the reason I'm bringing it up is these kinds of thoughts have been pondered for eons at this point. Take charge of your thoughts. You can do what you will with them. Meaning, if you have a thought, that's not something else thinking it. You have control over your thoughts. Like you can think certain things. So he was, that's more in general. So um, the thing is, with all of this, that's all true. Ultimately, we have the power to decide what gets left in our thinking and what gets taken out of our thinking. Sort of like the assembly line. We're in charge of it, and we tend to just take it all in like we have no control. And that starts to begin the pattern of helplessness with this whole thing. Like it just doesn't, I can't do it, right? But the thing is, they're trying to say, and what I'm trying to say in a horrible way at the moment, is the most powerful thing you have in your toolkit is you. It's true. You have the choice. You can change how you speak to yourself. You can't change the past. You can't change what happened, but you can change what you say about it. You can change what you think about it, and you can change your attitude about it. It could be a learning experience as opposed to a horrible thing. What did you learn from it? Then it could be an asset, right? And there's plenty of quotes for that about how people, something seemingly horrible happened to them. And then they said later, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I learned my strength. I learned that I could persevere. I learned XYZ. There's tons of stories about that. So take that to heart. Um, so again, you can't change the past, whatever. So their kind of statement about that. The past is past. Embark on your journey to success now at this very moment. Right. And one of their last things is in the chapter is just saying, look, everybody has mood swings. No one is up all the time. So you can be just like, okay, I'm doing this. I feel great about myself. I'm going to learn everything I need to learn. If I make a mistake, I'm going to pick myself up, et cetera, et cetera. But that doesn't mean you're going to feel like just bursting with excitement all the time. But it doesn't mean that you're not okay. Right. It can look different ways, and you're going to have mood swings. That doesn't mean that you've failed at the self-esteem part and that you're just you're this whole self-talk thing about what I'm going to hold on to from the past. It doesn't mean anything in that sense. All it means is you feel different today. If you operate out of your values, your feelings won't sway you as much. That's an aside also. It's not in the book, but that's something just advice wise that also is true. All right, let's see. Was there something else in that last little bit there? that I wanted to say. That is chapter 3. Okay, so oh yeah, yeah, okay, okay. So when you're feeling particularly low, it's the wrong time to focus on an area that you're not having much success. So they make a point of like, okay, if you're having trouble, don't try to take on the biggest thing. Go for small successes. Build on success. Find something small to win at. Then go to the next one and win at that, and then win at the next, and win at the next. Build strings of successes. That's what builds self-esteem. It's not doing some huge monumental thing and finally getting it, right? But there's going to be a lot of attempts and failure at that. That's a harder thing to overcome than, hey, I did that. Okay, got that done. Great. Let's do the next thing. Let's do the next thing. Now the next, now the next, and build to the big thing, not just take on the big thing and go crazy, right? All right. So, which is good advice. I think that's always a good idea to remember that it doesn't have to be all at once, right? And overnight success is a complete misnomer that doesn't really happen. It looks that way. People are touted that way, but I've never met anybody that that's actually true for. So you just take it on one step at a time, right? Okay. So there you go. That's my thoughts on that. And so feel free to join me, and you can always comment. Let me know what you think about the thoughts I had or the book itself if you want. At kfurman at e3lc.net. You can leave a comment on the video, and then we'll continue on with a couple more chapters next time. Thanks a lot for checking it out. Bye.